Okay, so I would like to share some of really preliminary observations on the Valency frame of subject-predicate in Bulgarian. And plan of the talk is as follows: some introductory words, briefly on Valency dictionary that I use, the observations themselves, and some conclusions. Okay, so my aim was to try to describe some of the specifics of the semantic constraints on the subject within the Valency frames of type subject predicate in Bulgarian. The resources I used is Valency Dictionary of Bulgarian from the tree bank itself, the BTB WordNet, and the lexicographic classes that are part of WordNet. So my observations go only on 5 lexicographic classes. There are 15 altogether. And these 5 lexicographic classes are with highest frequencies in the tree bank. So first, of course, I'm interested in intransitive verbs, only with the subject. And initially, it seems a very, very easy thing to do. However, I think we all know it's not trivial task even to say what verb is intransitive and which one is not. Of course, I view clausal objects as the verbs with clausal objects as intransitive, but in this group can come also transitive verbs that can have intransitive usages due to different causes like reflexivization or decausativization or some lexical shifts. I'm not going into that. In the paper, I cited some work done on this already. The other thing is that the verbs are not presented in a trivial manner, cannot be presented in a trivial manner in dictionaries. There are problems all the time, especially with the particles and C. So on the one hand, the grammar and dictionary have very complex interface, and not always we can present the phenomenon very well only in the grammar or only in the dictionary, so we need some intermediate levels. Another thing is that there is no ideal way to deal with the optionality of the arguments in this course, and again, how they are presented in the dictionary and how the verb behaves in the text. Okay, so the principles of the valence dictionary are as follows. The valence frames were kept to the service syntax. The perfective and imperfective aspects were encoded as separate lemmas. And the frame included only the inner participants, the semantically obligatory ones. And I follow Pustejovsky's classification of arguments, and it says that we have true arguments with obligatory participants, syntactically obligatory arguments, default arguments, they can be optional, and shadow arguments. They are lexically expressed, and if we want to express them explicitly, they have to be very specific. So all these kind of argument types can have intransitive usages. I view Bulgarian subject as a default argument because we know due to our rich inflection, we can skip it. Of course, on the surface, it seems that it's random, but there are also principles on when it appears explicitly or not. Discourse and grammar-based ones. So, as I'm interested in subject predicate, it comes third by frequency in the frames in the tree bank. So, additionally to that, there are some extracted examples to this type. And also all the verbs had to be classified with respect to these 15 lexicographic classes. And we'll see, I tried first to look at some semantic labels from an ontology, very general ones, and then semantic roles. Okay, you can see some statistics here, the frequencies, the number of the verbs, and almost 1/4 of them are intransitive, including intransitive usages. And here you can see the 15 classes with occurrences in the tree bank. And the first most frequent are verb communication, verb social, verb stative, verb motion, and verb cognition. And I stopped there with my initial observations. As I said, I first tried to use the simple ontology in a very simple way to see subjects that express person, animal, plant, artifact, and event. And you can see the distribution. So most subjects are persons because the corpus is mostly news media and literature. So, apart from the fact that person subjects prevail over the event and artifact ones, the observation is not very informative. For that reason, I decided to look at the semantic roles of these subjects. And the semantic roles that I use from WorkNet are agent, patient, experiencer, theme, goal, locative, and cause, not necessarily all of them in these 5 classes. Here is an example in my data. These roles were automatically related to the verbs. And you can see different usages of the same definition because the frames are different. The constraints on the subjects are different inside. And if we go further inside, we can see that this frame is verb communication, and the verb is reveal some secret, and yeah, the role and some example about this. Okay, so verb communication subjects, there are 283 verbs and 60 are with intransitive usages. This is around 1/5 of the cases. You can see more examples there. Here, most of the subjects are agents with a constrained person. Of course, I would say that this cluster, for me, includes also the role of effector. I mean, agentive kind of role, but not person. And additionally to that, we can have, as in VerbNet, the animals, like how, or events, like disclose some secret, and so on. So some typical verbs, maybe speak is not so interesting, but the perfective one, start speaking, is interesting because some of the, thank you, some of the meanings are connected to the expression of this meaning or this frame of the verb. And here we can see that this perfective one have impersonal usage in se passive. This is the predominant usage. В града се заговори за нея. Okay, another example of this connection between the frame and how it is expressed in the text is the verb write. For example, something writes somewhere. Това пише в митническата тарифа за до година. And here are some examples of the theme role. About verb social subjects, we have again approximately 1/5 of the cases. And here I give some examples with the verb act, действам. Here we have more types of expressing this frame into the text, as it is, with se particle, and very often with attributive present participles. I will not read them because the time is not so much, but you can see the examples. And what is interesting here that, for example, the verb сътруднича, co-manage, can present different frames. only with the subject or with the subject and indirect object and agents. Okay, I will skip that due to time constraints, but when we go to workstative subjects, here we already see that one half has intransitive usages, and more often patient and team become subjects. And yeah, I would like to say that here there are examples of agent and team, but more interesting is that very often the subject can be agent and team. I mean, there are verbs that can handle both of these semantic roles, like idvam in the sense of follow. На следващо място идва този аргумент. In verb motion types, again, more than half are with intransitive usage. And again, here we can have many semantic constraints within this generalized agent role. Yeah, I was too quick. Let's see now. Yeah. And the cognitive subjects are not so surprising. We go back to not so many intransitive usages within this group. Mainly we have subject experiencer with person constraint. So here it's not so interesting in comparison to what we know. And the conclusions. So within these most frequent types, the verb communication and verb social exhibit predominantly agent subjects with a person constraint. When we go to workstative type, the intransitive frames are increased, and also the patient team subject roles. Verb motion shares the person constraint of agent role with verbs of communication and verbs social, but like workstative, they have prevailing numbers of intransitive frames. And the only type among the 5 most frequent ones in the corpus verb cognition imposes the experiencer subject role. So I didn't go into the perception verbs. It would be interesting to see in respect with the previous speaker, but yeah, it was further in the frequency list. And so again, we go back to subject role with person constraints and not so many intransitive cases. And here I stop and thank you. If you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions, please. I have the following question. If you go at the work math classes, why so can you share with us your?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know that this distinction and classification is a very rough one, a very general one indeed. And my aim actually was to be as close as possible to VerbNet distinctions. However, I know that there are works looking especially in certain groups of verbs for Bulgarian, and it's very, very hard work. And for that reason, I decided first to keep to more general ones, and then maybe to start going deeper into these fine-grained classifications. So yeah, my ultimate goal is just to be as close as possible to VerbNet, which is not easy, of course. We don't have a book like Levin's book on the English classes. although we do have some very nice surveys on some groups of Bulgarian verbs, including from the university and the Institute of Bulgarian Language and our colleagues abroad. I think most verbs, most like groups of verbs are verbs of motion, verbs of cognition, verbs of perception, as we already heard. So maybe my next step could be just to go deeper into these groups, and slowly going to this fine-grained classification. Yeah, so any additional work that I might have missed, if you just write to me or tell me, I would be grateful. Thank you. Yeah.
And that comes of communication, the agents and closely. How do you handle machines and AI automating agents? And what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, this question, yeah, I view them as effectors depending on the verb. As I said in some of my previous slides, I view them as non-person agents, non-person causers, effectors, although sometimes it might not be true. I mean, there is a problem between saying this is agent or this is a team. So I recognize this problem. And I think about the question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.